just a few notes to start off. I wanted to acknowledge that I am going to be giving you this presentation from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people. And as folks that will be working in different parts of this nation, I think that it'll also be important for all of you to be acknowledging the territories that you are on and the indigenous peoples to which your lands belong. So we will get started with our first webinar for the grant, which will be a series of webinars that we will be rolling out over time as the grants proceed. And we wanted to start off with the application process because, as some of you may know, the application round for the first wave is going to be ending at the end of May. So we just wanted to give you a little hand just in case there are any questions or concerns, or if you've had any blockages being able to complete the process. So as you may know, the grant is named after Rosemary Speirs, which was one of the founders of Equal Voice, and is essentially a allocation of funds from the funder that is meant to fund 338 projects all across this nation for different community building projects. And so for a little information about Rosemary Speirs, she's a leader in the Canadian women's movement and has worked as a volunteer to ensure the participations of girls and women in Canadian politics, and has built Equal Voice into a national organization and spearheaded an innovative model for multi-partisan political action and organizing, which is what I think folks will have noticed was the theme of the Daughters of the Vote conference, as well as what we are trying to promote through this grant. And so for the application process, as I've mentioned a few times, this webinar is just going to go over the process just to kind of help you through that time. And as well as these webinars, we will be trying to support folks as much as possible through this process. So some of you may have received emails from different members of the DOV team. We are here throughout the entirety of the program to kind of help you and guide you in whichever ways that we can. If you have any questions, if you need any supports when it comes to building your projects, we are there to answer those questions. But we will also hopefully be starting a opt-in mentorship program so that in your regions or maybe in communities that are close to you, there may be folks that are there that have the expertise or the resources to be able to be more close to you and help you in the development of your projects or even in the development of your careers through this. And so that mentorship program, stay tuned, we'll be sending out more information throughout the next weeks and months. And as the supports are being developed and rolled out, you will be receiving emails. As you know, we love our emails. We'll be emailing you to make sure that you have all of the information that you need to be properly supported throughout the program. So just to clarify some of the things about the funding criteria for this program, you are the lucky group. The grant program is for the 2019 delegates only. And essentially, each of the delegates has been allocated $1,000. And so that's something that we just want to be super clear, is that the project funds 338 projects. So each one of you that participated in the DOV conference has an allocated $1,000. What we're more approving and looking for is the program, the project that you want to work on. But everyone has an allocated $1,000 for a community-based project. All the activities that this project funds must be nonpartisan. As our organization is nonpartisan, the project must also be nonpartisan and should be rooted in key principles of anti-oppression and anti-racism, which will be our next webinar. So stay tuned on how to ground your projects in anti-racist and anti-oppressive practices, as well as being able to guide through and understand nonpartisanship. And so some of the eligible projects can include advocacy and social change initiatives, events and mentorship programs, e-learning tools, promoting local issue awareness, initiatives advancing decolonization and Indigenous rights, arts-based activism and workshops, community gatherings, and knowledge exchanges. We're giving you folks like a few examples of some of the projects, but it's just to show you the diversity in which you can seek ways to base your project, whatever you're passionate in, whatever you may already be working on, however you want to promote community building in your communities. We're looking to see the ways in which we can support you through that. And so these are just some of the ways that you kind of may have seen or may be working or could be working in doing a community building project. So some of you have already sent in your applications, which is really amazing. We're really excited to be working with you folks. And one thing that has been offered is group applications. So some of you may have met some folks at the DOV conference that you wanted to work on, or you have maybe been able to discuss with other people subjects that you wanted to work on together, or seen common interests. And so in this application project, through these projects, there's also the option of being able to apply with a group. There is a maximum of 5 people per group. But the great thing about this is that you then have kind of a team to support you in working on a project, or you may already have been working on a project with these folks, and so being able to continue that work. Through the group applications, the funds are then pooled. And so, for example, 5 delegates means $5,000. So that project then has a $5,000 backing, whereas if you're by yourself, it's a $1,000 backing. And so if you're a group of 4, then it's 4,000, a group of 3, 3,000, group of 2, 2,000. And in the application that you'll see, we'll show you how to get to the application really soon, but in the application, you'll have to name your group lead. And so that'll be the person that will receive the payments. So folks will receive their payments through the person that has been identified as the group lead, and who will be the person who is responsible for the reporting of the financial reporting of spending and such. And yeah. So some important reminders out of some of the conversations that we've had with delegates that we wanted to highlight is that this is not a competition. This is really a chance for you folks to have an experience in small grant projects, or be able to build projects that you already have in your communities. And so it is not a competition. As I said earlier, there has already been $1,000 allocated to each of the 338 delegates. And so it's more of us being able to approve the project that you're working on, to make sure that it is based in the principles of the grant and of the project, and making sure that everything is also just like going to work in a way that makes sense to the project. And so it is not a competition, but it is only accessible by 2019 delegates. And you are also encouraged to capitalize on this opportunity, because if it's a project that you've already been working on, this is an ability to have some added funds that you can give into your project. If this is something that you've been thinking of working on for a really long time, you get those funds to be able to start off a project that you've been thinking about. Or if you're someone that is going to be seeking funds or grants in the future, one thing that's really important in being able to access other grants is that folks like to see that you've been able to access grants in the past and have been trusted with money before. And so this is an opportunity to have this experience so that you can be able to build up to greater grants, and be able to also just see what a grant process is like. Granted that this is a lot smaller, but at least you get your feet wet with being able to handle grants, do the reporting, and have the supports in being able to build a project. The application is put in place to help you build solid proposal and ensure it meets the rules and guidelines, but everyone can receive the same amount of funding. So as we said, $1,000 allocated to everyone, but this is really a chance to get the experience in building a solid proposal, keeping track of your funding, creating a budget, making a project, supporting a project, and those kinds of things. And like we said, it can also be on a project that you've already worked on before. So if you are working on a project that needs a little bit of extra funds and is based on community work and falls within the guidelines of this grant application and this grant program, then this is an opportunity for you to be able to do that. And it is a project that is independent of the Daughters of the Vote event. So this isn't owned by Equal Voice. It's not linked to the Daughters of the Vote event. It's a project that you are working on within your community that Equal Voice is supporting you with. But you yourself are a Daughters of the Vote delegate, and that's why you're able to access it. Some important things to know about expenses, because we want to make sure that everything is great and good. Some eligible expenses, I'll go through the list, is cost for refreshments, meals served during key project activities, daily facility rentals for project activities such as the rental of an event space, local transportation costs such as bus tickets. Sometimes it's nice to have that accessibility for folks that are attending your event, materials and supplies needed to carry out the project, Expenses related to the design, production, and printing of brochures and posters to promote the project and project activities. So anything for promotion or advertising. So purchasing of advertising space to promote the project and project activities. Integration costs relating solely to caring for dependents, children, as well as expenditures enabling people living with disabilities to participate. So we want to make sure that we're being accessible and accommodating. Professional services of an individual or a company with the expertise needed to carry out specific projects, activities, for example, translation services. And one thing that's really great about this project is that you have the ability to pay yourself for the work that you're doing. It's also really important to understand that these projects are going to be carried out by yourself, and sometimes that can be a lot of work, and you are putting your energy, your passion, your care into these projects. And so we've made a space for a maximum honoraria of $300, so that in the work that you're doing, you can also recognize that you deserve to be compensated. So if that's something that you were looking into doing, then you can. If that's not something that you want to do and you want to keep the money for just the project, that's also an option. But we wanted to make sure that you had that possibility. And then for ineligible expenses, so things that you cannot spend your money on, travel and other expenses incurred outside of Canada will not be covered. Retroactive funds for activities that have already occurred. So as we said, this can be something that's used on an already existing project, but let's say before you were approved for the project, or before you applied, or before this grant project was available to you, there were things that you spent money on for your project that's already existing. They cannot be reimbursed through this grant project. Donations, scholarships, or bursaries, and the purchase of alcohol will not be covered. And so, as we mentioned, the first round of applications is coming to a close at the end of May. After the approval process, you have 6 months to complete your project. And so for the first round, your report back period will end by January 31st of 2020. So we will be requiring you to submit your final paperwork by that date. For the second round, so that'll end at the end of June, so June 30th, 2019. Once again, you have 6 months to complete, and your paperwork will be handed in by February 29th, 2020. And then for the last round, it ends at the end of July 31st, another 6 months, and we will be expecting your paperwork and your report back by March 31st of 2020. Oop, so sorry, I got ahead of myself. So where and how to apply? So we've had that question a few times, and luckily here it is. So for the delegates from 2019, you will see, you can access the Daughters of the Vote website. So it's just www.daughtersofthevote.ca. And so under that, you'll see, as you see in the screenshot, there's the leadership grant where you'll see all of the information that you need. Atana has done an amazing job of making sure that everything is covered, so you can see that in that section. And then for the application, for you to be able to fill out the application, inside the overview of the grant section, there's a part that is that says apply for the grant. You just click that and you have access to the application. We've also added it here, and you've received it in emails that we would have had sent you throughout the intro period of assigning DOV employees to the delegates. And so for the application process, we're just gonna go over some of the sections that you'll go through. So for the first step, it's really easy of the project type. So here you have already a preset group of project types. You get to just choose one. And just to know, to make a strong proposal, you will need to tackle a local community issue or need, bring together neighbors and community members, and meet the budgetary requirements. So when you're thinking about your project type, that's just something to keep in mind in what kind of project type you choose. For step 2, you will tell us a little bit of about your great idea. So how will it benefit the federal riding or federal ridings around you? And so for this project, a few questions that have come up is, if you were in a riding, if you represented a riding that you did not come from or that you do not live in, what does this look like? I think it's, for us, what we've been saying is that it's more important for folks to be able to then parachute the projects back, or that project be able to be replicated, or that communities from that riding be able to access the project that you're working on. And that's the main focus. You may not be in that riding or have contact with that riding, but it should be able to be accessed by the communities from that riding. So your project proposal must have a connection to the riding you represented at DOV. However, like we said, you are free to be creative in how you plan to reach your constituency and or address local issues. For instance, you could consider using e-tools or partnerships with a local organization. So for example, some of the ideas that we've seen is that folks will have an e-resource related to mental health, and that can be accessed not only by people from the riding that they're going to be representing, but also by people all around the country, right? Or it can be accessed by people all around the country. Or for example, when you're being asked who you're going to partner with, you could be choosing to partner with an organization that's back in the community, in the community from the riding that you represented, and therefore you're developing a project that can be accessed by that community and by an organization that's already working in maybe the subject that you're looking to tackle and has that hold in that community, but also being able to benefit the community that you're actually living in. And so how will you promote your project? That's also important in how you're going to choose to connect it back or connect it to the riding that you're working in, of how you promote your project. Is it going to be through social media? Is it properly accessible? Are you going to go through partner organizations? There's a lot of different ways. If you have questions, a lot of us have experience, and so we can answer and help you kind of form those connections or find ways to build those connections. Step 3, like we said, which organizations and local stakeholders will you partner with? There will most likely be an organization or a partner or a stakeholder that is already working in the field or on the subject that you're looking to tackle. It is a really great opportunity to create not only a partnership for yourself, but for your project with those organizations, stakeholders, or partners, because that way you have an ability of maybe having more resources, more money, more space, more promotion, and that kind of supports the fact that this is a smaller grant and being able to build a project that's more robust and maybe also going to be able to be held post the 6 months and something that you can continue to work with this organization. And one thing that's really important to think about when you're creating these projects is what does the success of your project look like? So obviously when you're creating your project, there's something that you are trying to give out, or there's a service, or there's a resource, or there's a support that you are giving, or there's a way that you're building. And so what does the success look like? What are your goals? How do you know that you've reached them? And how will you know that your community has benefited from your project? Just some things to think of. So do not forget to be precise and give specific names of partners. It's better to be like, I'm going to be partnering with CAMH than saying a mental health organization. That way you're thinking more of what the capacity of that organization is than just thinking of a general topic where there's a lot of different organizations that may either be reachable or not and may fit into your project or not. That way we also have a better picture of how you're looking to build your projects and the ways in which you will be supported. Step 4. It is very important that you remember that you will need to keep track of your spending. So your project budget will be approved as a part of your grant application process. It is your responsibility to keep and maintain original receipts and invoices. As someone who has worked in handing out funds before, it is always important for you to remember to keep your original receipts and invoices, which means it's not a photocopy. The receipt that the person gave you is the receipt that you're giving, the same way that it's the invoice that was given to you that is the invoice that you're giving. If you want to keep a copy, the best thing to do is either have a file folder, photocopy it for yourself, and make sure that you're keeping the original copy that will be for us. You will be required to submit these to Equal Voice upon the completion of your project by mail. So we're going back old school to make sure we're getting those originals. You could send it by the postal services. So step 4, Tana has made it very easy to build your budget. And so you have a drop down for the different categories in which your expenses will fall. And so this is a rough idea of how you will be allocating the $1,000 that you will be receiving, the $5,000 or $4,000, $3,000 that your team or yourself will be receiving. This is something that we are we will all be here to support you in, as we know that a lot of you may not have the experience in budget allocation or budget building, and so it can sometimes be a little bit difficult. And so if you have any questions, make sure to ask. This is obviously a budget, and so this is kind of like a rough estimate of how much you're looking to spend in different categories, different types of expenses. And so don't feel as though the amount that you're putting restricts you to that being how much you're spending. You're just going to think about maybe a rough estimate of the amount that it may be, just so that we have an idea of how the money is being spent and that it looks like it will be able to support the project that you're looking to build. But definitely it's a budget, so it's just a kind of a preemptive measure of how you'll be spending the money, and then you can also then see how your project will be falling and how you'll be able to allocate funds, what you will and won't be able to do in building and explaining to us what your project is. So after the application approval, some things that will be happening is that we will be sending you a financial agreement that you will be signing and mailing back to us. So staying with the old school postal service, we'll stamp, send it back. And after we receive that, you will receive the first payment. So that's 70% of the total grant of funds. And after that, you have 6 months, as we mentioned, to complete your projects. And one thing that is really great about this project, as you will learn in your grant experience, is that you will have to write a short final report, and you will have to send by mail, again, not email, but mail, your original receipts and invoices to EV. So I'm really putting an emphasis on remembering to keep your original receipts and invoices. And then after we receive those, you will receive the last 30% of the total grant funds. And so if you are someone that was thinking of doing an honoraria, that might be where you might think of budgeting, because the last amount will be the 300, which was the max that we set for the honoraria. That will be received after the reporting period. And so that may be something that you want to think about when you're allocating your budget and thinking about how you'll be spending money throughout the development of your project. So we've come to the end. This has been a great time. So these are some of the frequently asked questions, but what I'm about to do is I'm going to open the floor up to anybody that may have questions. But just so you know, there's also a frequently asked question section on the website. And if you have any other questions, we are here every day of the week, and some of us even on the weekends, to answer your questions. And so if you have any further questions outside of this webinar or throughout your application process or throughout your projects, we are here to help. So we just got a question. Are we still all able to participate in partisan activities separate from the grant during the granting period? So you are able to go and participate in partisan activities, events. They just cannot be linked to your grant. And so if you're doing it separate, keyword being separate, you can engage in the ways that you want. The project itself and the ways in which it rolls out must remain nonpartisan. So for the question, what do we do if we see our projects more on the long term? For example, we have the project of going in classes to talk about politics, and we intend to do that every year. So that's the great thing about this opportunity, is that it is meant to kind of build a project for something that can be long term. So the reporting period is 6 months. So whatever you have built in those 6 months, that is what you're reporting for and what the money is for. But anything that you want to build after that, the project can continue on into something that you can continue on as a lifelong project. It can be something that you do annually. It can be something that you do even just a few months post the project end date. But it's not limited to the 6 months. That's just for our report back, and that's for the period of the waves. But if you were planning on building a project that's going to be long-term, that is also something that you're able to do. And another thing to add is that we can help you to get your project off the ground with these funds. And also one thing that we're hoping to build with the mentorship program, and also just with the connections that we also have and can build, is that we can also help you connect with other funders or other partners that can also support in you building your project and continuing your project afterwards. You can also email us at our emails And so you'll have received emails from your different delegate coordinators that are the folks that are supposed to be supporting you, specifically in the different groups of delegates. But yeah, this has been a great opportunity to first help you folks. We're very excited to see your projects roll out. We're very excited to help you throughout this time. This is really exciting for community building. It's really exciting for building your own portfolios and experience. And we're really happy to have seen you tune in and show interest. And we hope to continue these conversations throughout the next few months and years in the ways that we can support you. So thank you so much. Have a great evening.